Hello and welcome to this new video. This time we are going to make something like this. And like this. The animation is the same, but if you look closely, you will be able to notice that the first one is like a transition, but the second one looks like the image is part of the cubes. So we are going to make the animation with geometry nodes and then the two ways to add the images. There are probably better ways to do this, but this is the one that was easier for me. So let's get started. Press Shift A, Mesh, Cube. Move the cube away from the center by pressing G. Shift A again, Mesh, Grid. Go to the grid properties and change the size to 4. Tap to go to Edit mode and then go to the vertex group and make sure that all the vertices are selected. After that, click the plus icon to create a new group and click Assign. Then change the name of the vertex group. I'm gonna call it Animation. Tap again to go back to Object mode and let's go to View, Area and select one of these to split the view. On the new view, go to Editor Type and then Geometry Nodes Editor. Click New and change the name. Now inside this editor, press Shift A, S and type Instance and select Point Instance and add that close to the group output. Shift 8S again and type Scale and select Point Scale and put that behind the point instance. Shift 8S one more time and type Attribute Mix and add that behind the scale. These are the only nodes that we need here. Select the point instance, click on the object and select the cube. Select the point scale and change the type to vector. Now we need to reduce the cube scale until we have like a solid wall. The scale could be different from the one that I have right here. Select the mix node, switch the factor to attribute and B to vector. Inside the factor, you need to type the vertex group name. In my case, the name is Animation with a capital A. Inside A, we need to put rotation in lowercase. And finally, inside the result, we also need to type rotation. And let's try this. Go back to the viewport and press Shift 8, Empty, Cube. Press SY and scale the empty a bit like this. Press 7 on your number pad and move the empty by pressing G in X-axis. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's something like this. Select the grid again, go to the modifier, select Add Modifier, Vertex Weight Proximity. We need to move this modifier above the geometry node. Now we need to select the vertex group and the target object will be the empty. Let's go to Fall Off and change it to Smooth. Click on the geometry node modifier icon, go to the attribute mix and move one vector a bit as a reference. Go back to the weight proximity, influence, mask texture and click on New. Go to the texture properties, switch the type to clouds, go to color and change the contrast to 1.4. Go back to the modifier and move the highest a bit, and as you can see, we are adding a bit of random effect. Click the geometry node icon, go to the attribute mix and move the vector back to 0. After this, select the cube and press period on your number pad. Switch to viewport shading, tap to go to edit mode and 3 to go faces. Select the top face and go to the material properties. Here, click on the plus icon, then click New and Assign to add the color to that face. Now change the color and repeat. Select another face, click on the plus icon, New, Assign and change the color. Next face, plus icon, New, Assign and change the color. Do this to all the faces that you need. Tap again to go back to object mode. Now that we have the color, select the grid to finish the animation. With the grid selected, go to the modifier, move the global influence to 0 and the highest to 5. My animation is going to be a rotation in Y from the top face to the bottom face, so I need to move the attribute mix vector Y from the top to the bottom. This value could be different. I made this animation a couple of times, and for some reason the values were different every time. The only thing that I need is to complete the rotation from top to bottom. If now you move the global influence back to 1, you will see something like this. To finish this, we need to change this global influence to 10. If we test this with the highest around 10, we will have some cubes stuck in the middle. To fix this, we need to move the texture contours a bit till we have the correct effect. So let's go to the texture and move the contours a little bit. Remember that the values could be different for you. Go back to the modifier and make a test. Now, you could skip this part because I'm only going to explain what the cloud texture is doing to get this random effect. I put some timestamps so you could skip to the next step. Let me show you what the clouds are doing. I'm going to turn off the geometry nodes. This global influence is moving the vertex weight from 1 to 0 using the black and white colors of the texture. If I go to weight paint and move the highest, you will see the effect. So you could play with these clouds to change the effect. Okay, moving on. Now that we have the highest in 10 and the global influence, select the empty and move that in -X, and you will see the animation coming. I'm going to move to the timeline, and I'm just going to use 90 frames. With the empty selected, press N, right-click in X location, and select Insert Single Keyframe. Move to frame 70, and move the empty in -X until we see the other face and add a single keyframe. Now I'm going to add some keyframes in the middle to see the red faces, but this is also on you. Just one keyframe around 30 and a second one around 50. After this, I'm going to right-click on the timeline and change the interpolation to linear. Let's move on. Select the camera and press N and change all the rotation values to 0. After that, press Alt-G to move the camera to the world center, and then press G-Z to move it up. With the camera in that position, press 0 on your number pad and adjust the camera with G-Z to get the amount of cubes that you want or need. Once you have it, turn off the geometry nodes modifier, and with the grid selected, go to edit mode by pressing tab. Make sure you are in vertex selection and delete the vertices that are outside the camera view. This one and this one. After this, tap again to go back to object mode and turn on the geometry node modifier. We basically finished with the animation. Now we need the images. The next part will be for the images, and there you could select to do the version 1 or version 2. Help us to make videos more often with your subscriptions, likes, dislikes, comments, and shares. Before we start, there are some timestamps, so you could select the way to add the images, or you could watch both. And remember that this is one way to achieve this, but probably there are a lot of ways to do this too. Let's start by moving our timeline to a position to get 3 colors for the render. Now go to View, Layer Properties, and turn on Ambient Occlusion and Cryptomatte Material. In my case, my resolution is 1920 by 1080, so I'm going to use images with the same size. After this, press F12 to render an image. Now that we have the render, we need to go to the Compositing tab and turn on Use Nodes. Here we are going to add the images. Start by holding Ctrl, Shift, and click on the image socket to get the View node. Then go to the sidebar, View, and click on Fit. Press Shift 8S and type Cryptomatte and add 1. Then make 2 copies of this node with Shift D. Shift D again. That's it. Let's connect the render layer with the CryptoMatte node. Once you connect the 4 sockets, move the mouse above the connection, hold down Shift, and right-click and drag down to create a reroute in the middle. Press G to move this down, and use this to connect the other 2 CryptoMatte nodes. Image, Crypto 0, Crypto 1, Crypto 2. Now, move the viewer closer and connect the peak socket to the viewer. After this, click the Add Eyedropper and select a color. And then repeat the process with the other 2. In my picker, I can only see 2 colors, but using the original image, I will be able to select the other 2 colors. Probably yours is not having this issue, but even with that, you could continue the tutorial. After this, you will have 3 colors, 1 per CryptoMatte. These are going to be our masks for the images. Moving on, press Shift-8S and type image to add 3 image nodes. And use these 3 to open the image or videos that you want to use. I'm gonna move the viewer closer to the images and then press Shift-8S and type Set Alpha. Connect the image to the image socket of the Set Alpha and the CryptoMatte matte to the Alpha socket like this. Select the Set Alpha, Shift D to copy, and repeat the process with the second image and the second CryptoMatte. And finally, Shift D to copy the Set Alpha and do the same to the third image. The next step is to press Shift-8S and type Alpha over, and make a copy by pressing Shift D. Connect the first and second Set Alpha to the first Alpha over, and then connect the first Alpha over to the second one and also the third image to that one. And now, if we connect that to the viewer, we will see all the images inside. To finish this, press Shift-8S to add a mix node, connect the alpha over and the ambient occlusion to the mix node, and you could add an RGB curve to the ambient occlusion if you wanted, and then change the mix node to multiply. Now it's just a matter of connecting this to the composite and render the animation with Ctrl F12. And remember to add the folder to output the render. Okay, this is version 2 to add the images. Before we start, we are going to need 2 things. The first one is a UV checker. There are a lot of free UV checkers. You could search for one with Google, and I highly recommend you to get one with colors and letters. The second thing that we need is an image editor software. It could be Photoshop or a free one, like GIMP or Krita. Start by selecting the cube and press period on your number pad. Go to the Materials tab and delete the materials until you only have one and add a name for that. Make sure one of your views is inside the shader editor. If you have the Node Wrangler add-on on, just select the principal BSDF and press Ctrl T to add everything that we need. If not, just press Shift-8S and add an image node, a mapping node, and a texture coordinate, and connect all like in the video. After this, click Open on the image node and add the UV checker. Then go to one of the views, select Editor Type and switch to UV Editor. Tap to go to the Edit mode and 3 for Face Selection. Make sure UV Sync Selection is on. Select all the faces and press S to scale the faces a bit. Next, select each face and organize all of them, just because it's easier to work like that. I'm gonna move all by pressing G. G for this. G again. G. And G for the last 2. And then put everything inside. The next step is to be sure that all the faces are pointing in the right direction. If one is facing the wrong direction, you just need to select that face in the UV editor and press R to rotate that face, either 90 or 180. So, with the original cube selected, tap to go to Edit Mode if you are not there, and select the first face. As you can see, this one is face down. So I need to go to the UV editor and press R to rotate that 180 degrees. This side is correct. This one is face down. So go to UV editor, press R, and make the rotation. I also going to use the bottom face, and it's face down. So I need to fix that with the UV rotation. Those are the only faces that I need, and I don't need to fix the other faces. Tap to go back to object mode. After that, select the camera, hold down Shift and select the grid. Go to File, Export, Alembic. Here I need to click on the selected objects only and also face sets. Add a name and export. Save your blend file, then open a new file, and in here we need to go to File, Import, Alembic, and select the alembic that you exported. Now if you hit play, the animation is still there, but now we have each cube as a single mesh. I'm going to delete the main scene camera and add the one that I have above the cubes as the main camera for this scene. After that, press 0 on your number pad, go to the outliner and select the first cube, scroll down to the end, and then hold down Shift and click the last cube to select all of them. Go to View, Area, and split the viewport. On this new viewport, go to Editor Type and select UV Editor. Tap to go to Edit Mode, click on UV Sync Selection, and let's start organizing all the faces. Press 3 to go to Face Selection. Start selecting the faces one by one and use G to move every face in order. We are going to make the first row. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are going to fix this in a moment. You just need to be sure that the UV faces are in the same order as the 3D viewport cubes. Now that you have the first row, let's go to Snapping, select Vertex and turn Snapping on. Then select the second face, press G and move that to the first face. Repeat that until you have the first row aligned. With the snapping still on, we can now start moving all the faces by pressing G. Now that we have the front side, turn snapping off and select another group of faces on the UV editor. And then press Shift H to solo that side. After this, start making the columns to create the entire side. The first column with the snapping off, and then turn it on to align all the faces like we did in the first one. Repeat the process with all the faces that you need until you finish. I'm going to skip the other faces till the end so you could pause the video and finish yours. I'm finishing the last face and then turn the snapping off. After this, organize the faces a bit and select all of them by pressing A or with box selection. Scale everything down a bit to put it inside the UV space. Once you do that, tap to go back to object mode, switch the editor type to shader editor, and then go to the material properties and click on use nodes. And then add an image node, mapping node, and a texture coordinate node, and connect all of them like in the video. If you have the Node Wrangler add-on on, just select the principal BSDF and press Ctrl T. After that, select the image node and add the UV checker there. Switch to viewport shading and move the timeline to check if all the faces are in the right position. Now we need to press tab to go to edit mode, switch the editor type to UV editor and select all the faces and go to UV, export UV layout. In here, select the format that you want, also select the size and then click export UV layout. Now open the UV layout using the image editor software and add the image and align all of the images above the UV layout. Make sure that all your images are only a bit bigger than the UV faces, like the one that I'm doing here. And if you need to, delete part of the image that is outside the borders. Once you finish that, you could add some colors to the sides that you're not going to use. Finish with everything, and once you have everything done, export the result as a JPEG or PNG. Back in Blender, make sure that you are in object mode and switch the editor type to shader editor and replace the UV checker with your new image. And that's it. You could add some ambient occlusion and render your animation. I hope you liked this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.